Hi, everyone. I'm Meryl Stewart, CEO of Marketing and Business Solutions, and I'm so glad you're with us today. I'm also excited to be joined again by Ryan Gonzalez, CEO of the Touchstone Collective. She has an amazing consulting business working with many organizations, nonprofits, and for-profit companies. And Ryan, I wanted to kind of pick up where we left off on our last conversation. I know we were in the middle of a pandemic. Everyone was trying to kind of get their feet under themselves and figure out their paths forward. We had talked about your experience, like training for marathons, and some of the things that you were kind of using from a mindset perspective to really kind of pace yourself, especially relating that to businesses, relating that to business practices. And I think one of the things that really stood out to me when we talked the last time was how closely related, kind of training for a marathon, which is something that most people, think is a really huge, thing to prepare for, which it is, but also an amazing accomplishment once you get through it. But that there are some tactics that people use kind of as they train, in running and as they train as to be an athlete, that can also be used on the business side. It's shaping our mindset and how we think about things. So I wanted to kind of talk today a little bit about, some things that I think we've probably learned in the last 18 months or so, but then ways that you're kind of inspiring your clients and the ways you're thinking about how to transfer that knowledge of like training and running and development of your mind into practices that people can use for their businesses. So I'll let you get started and kind of, pave the way for us on this.
Yeah. And thank you, Meryl, for having me on again. And, I love working with Meryl. She's an awesome partner and friend. And I think as we dive into this space today, it's just really neat to really use ourselves in a way that we're kind of like business fitness trainers, I guess, in a sense, is what this topic really kind of relates around. And I really kind of wanted to get into what it means to have a runner's high and what a runner's high does as a business person and how you can translate that into your work. And so I don't know how many people have experienced this. I think quite a few have, but it's that sense of euphoria, that sense of peace and harmony you get at some point in your training where something just kind of clicks. And at that point that you can do more, that your energy is there. You feel content in what you're doing. And you're ready to kind of take the next paces. And so I think runners get to that point, and I think you can too in your business. And I think, as you mentioned, with everything going on last year, some of that you fell into that in a sense because you had to innovate, you had to be more creative in the things that you did, you had to have that energy. So now as we move forward, you've kind of hit that marathon point, but you want to keep that feeling going. And what I've been seeing, and I think you've probably seen this too, Meryl, is we went from one space of working at home and, kind of dealing with, how do you just get through and how do you survive, to now you have to thrive.
Survival was the big part. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it was survival. And now we're trying to thrive. And how do you take that feeling, that runner's high, and bring it into your productivity? So you're not only just doing well with your business, but you're feeling good about it. And so that's kind of what I wanted to dive in and give some tips and tactics in today. So I'd love to kind of share that with the audience. And I think where we really start is diving into setting deadlines and automating yourself.
And I have to tell you, like when I was reading through this and you and I kind of talked about this, setting deadlines is huge. I know it seems like such a simple thing to do, but I think that a lot of people assume, and I know I do this for myself. I have to hold myself accountable or have people like you to hold me accountable, but you really have to set deadlines. I mean, a lot of times I'll have a conversation with someone and it will make great progress, but in all honesty, it's not going to get done unless we set a deadline. And so I was just on the phone this morning with someone and they were like, we should do this and we should do that. And I was like, great, let's just set a date. Like set a date for a month from now. And that's when we're going to do it. Because if I have something to work towards, it becomes much more tangible for me to figure out how to get there. So talk about deadlines and how that relates to not just the runner side of things, but also how we translate into our mindset.
Yeah, so every runner sets a deadline, whether it's going to be running a marathon or losing weight or being more healthy, whatever that goal is, they set that deadline because they need to have a plan to get there and they need to have those working steps. And so let's face it, like if you don't have a deadline, it's like you said, it just doesn't get done. It gets pushed to the side and it doesn't happen. And so that's where I think automation really kind of plays into setting deadlines because there's only one of you. And, we're moving at a pace that's a lot faster. So things like Monday.com, things like social media automation that takes your posts and puts them in there and you set some time once a week and then it's taken care of for you. Calendly is another one a lot of folks use.
I love that.
Yeah, instead of having to like sit there and go back and forth in an email with someone to figure out when you can meet, your times are already established. They just select a time and then, you're good to go. Your CRM software can do so many things for you, whether it's, creating your marketing emails and campaigns and automating that system for you or pulling reports or really looking at that as a way to research a business or a company, those kind of things that help you along the way to set those deadlines so that, you're getting the work done, but then you have a plan to kind of work toward it. And I think that's really where you need to start. And then that kind of leads into my next point, which is really focusing on those 2 to 3 things every week that are really working towards making an impact towards your goals. So
Ryan, be honest. How good are you at focusing on 2 or 3 things max?
I used to suck at it, quite honestly. But I've kind of learned that if everything is a priority, nothing becomes a priority. And yeah. And so you got to get to a space where, when you have your goals identified, take a look at your workload and say, what's the time of the day that my brain is most alive? Like, am I the morning person where I know I can take on those 2 to 3 things in the morning and I'm active and I'm ready to go? Or am I that creative person where my brain turns on at 2 or 3 o'clock in the afternoon? And that's where I need to tackle that and kind of fitting things into those spaces and then taking those little things that are going to take you 2 to 3 minutes to do and fitting those in between when, they don't require as much brain capacity.
I will tell you something that I do, because I think it's great advice, something that I do that I really hadn't done so much until probably the last year, but I put tasks, like I focus on tasks in my calendar, and I will only put in like 2 to 3 tasks per day. And sometimes it's per week, it just might be, it depends on how big the project is or what I'm focusing on. But what it does is it keeps me hyper focused on finishing something that I started so that, I don't like half finish something and then it kind of lags on for 2 or 3 days. And then I'm frustrated and kind of angry at myself for not getting it done. And then there's guilt. And then there's all these other kind of emotions that go with it. So I'm trying to set myself up for success by really task scheduling things so that my mind can stay focused. And if I think of something that I forgot or something else comes up, then I schedule it. Like I just schedule time on my calendar for when I'm going to do it. That helps keep me really focused. And I know that, writing down things, crossing things off lists, all of those things are great. But I really like your focus on 2 to 3 things because you're right. Like we can't be great at everything. We can't do everything 100%. And if we're pulled in 10 to 20 different directions, which I think many people can relate to, especially being home during the pandemic, teaching their kids, watching their kids, balancing work and all of those things, like you can't be good at all of it all of the time. So when it comes to business, I think this is a brilliant recommendation because I think we assume that we're just going to get it done. Like it's in our heads and we just kind of have that assumption. But when you really start focusing on it, I agree with you. I think it's good to put that into perspective so we can actually be really successful at doing the work and the tasks that we need to do.
Yeah. And I mean, and as well as me with working with different clients is how many times have you heard that, they go through a week or 2 weeks and, they didn't get any closer to their goal.
Exactly. Right.
And it's not because they weren't focused as a team. It's just there was too many distractions. And so, just kind of keeping on pace with that, or, working with someone who can help you to keep on pace, or, just realigning your brand in some capacity, I think definitely helps. And to your point, Meryl, on how you make your schedule, I think chunking your schedule is so important too, because just like athletes, you need to have recovery time in your week. And if you don't have time to recover, to get a good meal in, a healthy meal, to have some physical activity, if you don't chunk your time, you're left with no time at the end of your week. And so what's worked very well for me personally is just making sure that, maybe I take 2 days a week where I know these are meeting days. Like, we're doing back-to-back meetings, we're having conversations, we're getting that creativity out. And then there's those spaces of time where we're focused on our admin work, where we're doing data entry, where we're getting proposals done, we're doing writing, and we're scheduling those blocks of time, so that when you look at your week as a whole, you were accomplishing those things, but you also have those breaks scheduled in. And so I try to make those no longer than 90 minutes, because I know you're going to hit a breaking point in your mind where you need to stop. And so I think that's really helps your productivity. Just like a runner who needs to prepare and, get their outfits done and meal prep before the week starts, and look at their fitness trackers and make sure they got the right running routes. I mean, you got to do the same thing with your time.
I agree. And it's funny that you kind of talk about chunking your days. I think I just had this conversation with a colleague last week, because what I'm struggling with is reintegrating in-person meetings and still doing virtual, right? So on my schedule, my calendar's a nightmare right now. On my calendar, when it was all virtual, it was really easy to kind of say, okay, Tuesdays and Thursdays are going to be my heavy days for virtual meetings and calls. And then Mondays are usually kind of my ease into the week, make sure, I have kind of everything in order. But then, it feels more balanced, right? But now I'm really struggling with, okay, I've got these virtual meetings I still have to do because some people are still virtual. I've got in-person meetings that I've got to start reintegrating, and that I've got to account for travel time. I have to account for things that I haven't really had to think about, for the last 18 months. So I will get there. I'm going to have you hold me accountable to it. It's hard. It's hard to, because I find myself having really long days with lots of conversations and meetings that are incredibly productive. But then I actually have to sit and do the work, and I have to get it done before we have the next meeting. So yeah, it's important. I think a lot of people can relate to that. I feel like a lot of people, especially, if you're on a team, or whether you own a business or you're working in a business, can relate to just feeling like they're on this treadmill of going through the motions of all the things they need to do. And then when you finally sit back and take a breath, it's like, well, when am I going to do the work? So I think it's really good advice to think about it that way.
Yeah, I mean, we're all in the same bucket right now. It's kind of funny how we went from one pace to a really, really fast pace. It's starting to feel like. So, like, I think these efficiencies and productivity really help in moving forward to kind of get yourself to a place where you are feeling comfortable. And it's not going to happen overnight, obviously. Like, we're all going to feel challenged with it. But I do say, do not underestimate the power of a Sunday evening. And I say that because it's a time where you're a little bit more at peace. You don't have the distraction of your emails coming through as much, or phone calls, or fires you have to put out. And getting that head start before Monday morning and planning out your calendar is huge. Sense of relief and kind of easing into your week. And so I used to be a victim of that, of just taking my weekend, not thinking about work or anything work related, and then just jumping into a Monday and then feeling that level of anxiety and stress. And, that prep work is what runners do. They have to do that prep work to ensure that they're ready for the time that it takes to just run every week. And so that's a plan for runners to fit that in, because they're bosses too. They have families too.
Yep.
So, I don't underestimate a Sunday evening, and it does come in handy for me personally. And I think for the other folks who I know who do that as well.
I agree. And I think about, I have kids, you've got kids, usually I'm prepping Sunday night for school, for the school week, to make sure we've got all our I's dotted and T's crossed, and everybody leaves the house with the right stuff. But I do that, I take Sundays usually in the afternoon to do it. What I've kind of narrowed it down to is, even if it's like an hour, maybe 2 max, but usually it takes me about an hour to just get my head in the right headspace so that I can really focus on what needs to be done. So I do that with the kids, but I do it too. I do it with our business, and just make sure I have all my calendar stuff ready for the week, make sure that I haven't massively overlooked something, that I need to be getting done. And what I've also done, Ryan, is I ease into Mondays. So I stopped taking Monday morning meetings at 8 or 9 o'clock in the morning. I'm not doing one. No one's prepared at 8 or 9 o'clock in the morning on a Monday to have a meeting. I just have found that it's not as productive as I hoped it would be for many years. And so what I've done is I don't take meetings till 10. I'm usually up and kind of ready to go by about 7:30. But I use that time in the morning on Monday mornings to also just kind of reset, to make sure that I can, because I'm sitting in front of my computer, sitting in front of my stuff. And that's been really helpful just to get me in the right headspace. Because, as you said, if you kind of walk into everything in a rush, there's anxiety that comes with that. We feel like we're already behind, and we just started. And so I really love the idea of, using a Sunday evening, kind of easing into Monday. If you can, I think it makes sense to be able to do that, so you're more focused on where you need to go.
Yeah, I mean, I totally agree, Meryl. And runners have a saying, never miss a Monday, because Monday sets your tone for the whole week. And so if you're going to set anxiety at the start of your Monday, it just all starts going down from hill from there. Just if you miss a workout on Monday, forget it. Your week is done. I'm maybe that's just me, but it's done. It doesn't start off quite as well. And so, I think physical activity as it relates to business and us being your fitness trainers, I mean, I think there's a lot of ways to just use those practices to rethink how you work every week. I mean, even when we think of meetings, right? Richard Branson is really good at this when he tweets. He is all about the walking meeting. I mean, we are in a space, like you said, where we're transitioning from a lot of virtual stuff to in-person stuff. I mean, there's an in-between. Offer somebody a walking meeting, get out there and be productive, because when those juices are flowing and there's movement, more creativity is formed as well. I mean, it's been proven. So, no one said you had to sit in a conference room for 3 hours and have go for a walk and, bond with somebody as well, and get that trust level so that you can actually create some really good stuff together.
I've also taken many meetings while I've walked on the treadmill, and I'll tell people I'm on the treadmill. So, if you hear noise, that's what I'm doing. But honestly, I feel more productive. So I'm glad to know that, I'm following in the steps of Richard Branson and, and others, but you feel more alive. My creative energy is different when I've exercised, even if it's just walking, and so I love that. The walking meeting, you used to do that when we worked together in person at an institution. Yeah. We used to do a lot of walking meetings, and I think that it's a great break, in just the rhythm of your day. We all need to stand and move more. I mean, we all do. And so instead of just, saying that that's something that needs to be on our list, just do it, get up and walk around, take that phone call, go for a walk. I think my family probably laughs at me. I pace in the front yard. Yeah. I mean, best when I'm on my phone, pacing in the front yard, walking up and down the driveway in the street, and all our neighbors probably think I'm nuts, but I have to move. I can't, It's hard for me to just sit still for hours at a time. So I love that.
Yeah, that might be our Leo connection. Leo people just can't really sit still.
No, I don't do sitting still very well.
Yeah, but no, I mean, I think just new ways to do things, and new ways to incorporate things that make your training better. And if it's movement, do movement. I mean, and for most people, I think it works. I mean, how many times have you heard somebody say they get their best ideas when they're driving to work or they're in the shower? It's that the feeling of the senses that just kind of bring about creativity. And so I think it's so important, and it really relates also to just not yourself, but the people you work with, and building that camaraderie with your teams. And, whether it's incorporating fitness goals, when in the workplace, those things help. And they also help when you're thinking about mental health as well. And so, and I know you and we work with clients that do a lot of things around their corporate social responsibility and how they're giving back, and how you're making their employees accountable for giving back as well. And so when you can schedule volunteer days, or you align yourself with a nonprofit in a way that the employees feel empowered to do better in the community, also brings that sense of runner's high. I mean, when a runner trains for a marathon, most times they're signing up with a group because they know it's gruesome and they can't do it alone. And so you have to go into it knowing that you have others around you that are in your village, and you want to create that village in your workplace, because that runner's high, that sense of peace and happiness and harmony, comes in a lot better when you're not alone. So that's what I found with teams that work very well, and with diversity, inclusion, and equity, just being so in the forefront, understanding and getting to know the people that you work with, so that there's that new sense of perspective in your workplace. It makes you happier. It does.
It does. And I think it allows, really the benefits that a team really can provide, which is not just that camaraderie, but accountability, and being able to lean on people. You have to be able to lean on each other. Sometimes you need to get motivated. You need that a little extra push, and it's better coming from someone else than it is maybe your partner or your spouse or your friend. And so I think it's really important. And I agree with you. I think that teams that have kind of that camaraderie building, that really a sense of teamwork that is part of their culture in their business or organization, just thrive so much more, because you're not in it alone. Yeah. And I think that's the thing. I think that when you feel like you're in it alone, and you feel like all of it's on you, it makes it feel a lot heavier, and a lot harder, and it's a lot easier to give up. But I think that when you have a team of people that you're working with, and you all can rely on each other, to kind of balance out your daily grind and all the things you have to do, it makes it so much more enjoyable, and you get to have fun along the way. So I think that's really smart.
Yeah. And we all fell kind of in a place where we were alone a lot more, working from home, and we weren't able to exercise those channels. And now, with things getting a little bit back to normal again, it's nice to do those things, because we realize at that point that we weren't alone. Everybody was going through something on their own. And now we're here to support each other. And let's start doing some of these things again, so that we can be more productive teams moving forward, together. And so all of these things today really they're simple things, but they really help in the long run when it comes to mental health, when it comes to physical health. And that's what running does too. I mean, it doesn't just help you physically, it helps you mentally. And you want to get in a place where you feel like you have the capacity mentally to take on what's in front of you in a way that works for you. And so I think that's why this topic is so relevant to where we are right now. I know we've had enough conversations where we're feeling as small shops that some of these things have to be incorporated in order for us to succeed and be good at business. And so I hope that this really helps some people out there who are looking for some strategies.
Well, and I really appreciate you sharing them. I think it's very important. It's important that we're reminded too, about small steps that we can take to make things, better for ourselves, but better for others, and feel better about what we're trying to accomplish. Because I think at the end of the day, we can all do lots of things, but it's also about enjoying the ride, right? And so I think some of these things help put that into perspective a bit, so that as we do the work that we're doing, it's more enjoyable. There's less pressure. There's less anxiety. We're setting ourselves up for success. So I really appreciate you sharing that with us today. If you'd like to learn more about what we do, I will share the links for our own companies individually in our comment section as our videos are posted. But we really appreciate you joining us today. Thank you, Ryan, so much for sharing this. And I wish you continued success. And I always enjoy working with you.
Same.
And we hope to see everybody next time. So we'll see you soon. Thank you.
Thanks for tuning in.
Bye.
Bye.